what does it mean to have a servant's heart, and how in stress and the struggles can a person be patient? And also, how could I build a bridge between the generations, the big generation gap with the young and old? So I began with it, and it was really hard to go from there because I thought that like the challenges and lessons were like just so overwhelming. Like I couldn't believe that I had to go and talk about this and serve people, and I'm a shy person, so I don't know, I didn't feel like I was totally prepared for it. So I decided that just taking that one step would make that snowball effect. I really wanted to learn how to serve and have patience while serving people because I don't have very good patience and tolerance with that sometimes. And so I wanted to build a strong relationship while I was there also with the people that I was serving. And so I realized while I was serving that there was a huge generation gap. There was young people that I was serving, old people, but there wasn't really a connection. There was just this empty gap of space where I was like, well, I'm not serving this middle space, and it was my generation. And I thought maybe that my generation could be that bridge. So I visited 3 places. I went to my grandpa's house, a nursing home, and the NICU at Children's Hospital. And I chose the nursing home because I wanted to see that history, and I wanted to see the different memories that people had. And I also went to my grandpa's for kind of the same reason. And my grandpa really, he really immersed himself in that history. And so I thought, hey, I can get so much from you. And then I also decided on the NICU because I saw that there was the generation of parents, above us, and then the little babies that they had, and they were struggling. And if you guys don't know, a NICU takes care of the babies who are born preemies or sometimes born with alcohol and drugs in their system. And so I really wanted to see that, and I wanted to try to sympathize with them and live life with them and really build relationships with that. I also wanted to see the nurses because I thought that, hey, I want to see what they do and how they dedicate their time and just that aspect of that job. And so I started reading to these different places, and I chose reading because as a kid, I myself was read to by my parents, and then my siblings were reading to my great-grandparents just to connect with them. And I don't know, it felt really special to all of us to read the same book. I thought it was neat and stuff that we could read the same book and talk about the same things for once, because I didn't really have a lot in common with my parents because that generation gap again. So I wanted to go off of my fall capstone at first because I wanted to look at the people and what they were like back then, and I also wanted to look like what they were now and how they're living their lives differently. So I really wanted to see those stages, an outsider view of it. So I started looking into it, and I realized that I wasn't getting the instant gratification that I wanted. I wanted it to be handed to me basically on a silver plate. I wanted it to be easy, and I was so naive about that. I thought that I would be able to just have my answers. I would write this paper and be done with it because I was a senior, and it wasn't like that. I started to realize that I had to actually open up my heart. I had to dedicate so many hours to going places, and I realized that the people working there were also doing the same thing, but even more. They were working nights, for hours, 12-hour shifts, 13-hour shifts. They were working so much. So, And so I needed to take time to love for everyone. I needed to started to care about the people, and it was people like our own grandparents, our own parents, and even your children. I needed to start connecting with them. So I started to read to the nursing home where my great-grandma actually lived, and I started to ask about the age difference. And there was such a big, difference with their things. They had different music, they had different transportation. We were talking about a horse-drawn carriage to go places, and I was like, well, that's weird because we just have cars. I can jump in my Mini Cooper and get to a place really quickly. They had to go for hours, and it was cold outside, or they went in the weather. It was just crazy. And we also talked about the different music, just the different way we even talked to, because like they don't say like or totally or something like that. It was just a whole new culture. I thought that was really interesting. So I started going on Sundays to read, and I started getting that info from them, like all that cool like history, and I was just really excited about it. And the more I started to read and listen to them, the more I started to have a deep relationship with them and deep admiration for the people who they were and like even still are. It was really hard to go to the nursing home because a lot of the patients have dementia, or they just like they just have no clue what's going on, and it's really hard to connect with people when they start forgetting your name and you're like, oh, that's okay, or like they don't remember the story that you read to them just like a few days ago. So I thought that was really hard. So after the nursing home, I went to my grandpa's house, and so I just asked him his one question, like, what was life back then for you? Like, what was it like to be a teenager back when you were a teenager? And he's a pretty quiet man. He doesn't talk much. He doesn't tell his stories that much, but that's because no one really asks. So just asking that one question opened up this whole history of, like, just the different things that he had in store in his life and these just rich memories. So the more I talked to him, it gave me my answer about the generation gap. They're just so left in the dust by our technology, and I think it's crazy because like we really do have a lot in common with them. We had the same like little crushes or something in high school like they did. So I just think that there was just so much more that we could connect with them on. I started talking to my grandpa, and it really made me focus on what life was like and how rich life could be and how we speed through life so much. We just are so busy with our everyday lives thinking like, hey, like I need to go do this like project or this project. And we don't really sit down and take time to listen to people's stories. So I was really honored to be able to spend time with these people, and like I was honored to hear the memories. And it reminded me of Romans 12:10. Be devoted to one another in love, honor one another and above yourselves. And so after listening to that verse, I was like, well, who are the people who are putting others above themselves? And that's when I started to look at the nurses at the NICU and the nurses at the nursing home. And I started to think, okay, so that's what I'm going to do for my spring proposal. So being able to love and serve these people and serve them in the most affectionate way I could with the respect to give to them, I started to connect with them. I stopped worrying about the busy life, and I stopped worrying about the craziness of senior seminar, and I started to kind of like listen to my own life and start to cherish other people's stories, not just my own or not just my family's, but other people outside of that. And so, yeah, I just really encourage you guys to appreciate what you're blessed with. Also, one of my favorite memories from the nursing home was I really connected with this woman named Livonia. She is about 97, I think, and so I started to read to just her because the other people were getting kind of tired of reading or like not really fully understanding. But Livonia has been suffering from dementia for, I want to say 6 years, and I got a call a few weeks ago before I started writing this, and it was her family saying like, we really are blessed like by what you've been doing by coming and reading. And I was able to, so she had forgotten a lot of the people that worked there, their names, and she started forgetting her family's own names. But she kept on asking where I was when I didn't show up for my normal reading days. She started to ask, like, where's Chantelle? And she, like, called me by my name. And she was like, I loved having her read. And so I just thought that was cool that she could share that with me. And I also thought that, like, the people there at the nursing home had just so little to, like, give. But they gave their whole, like, their all. They gave their like love to me, and I didn't even deserve it. Like I I don't need to come in and like expect their attention, but they gave me it, and it was great. It was so amazing. It opened like a whole entire new door to really like listening to people. So to bring my fall and spring together, I wanted to look at the people who worked with the people in the nursing home and the people with them, and also I just saw that their humility was so great. Like I saw that they were like doing everything in their power to make people comfortable, to care for the people that we love too. And so Philippians 2:3-5 says, "Do nothing for rivalry or conceit, but in humility, humility comes from." Oh, sorry, I totally lost that one. Okay, so so that was one of my favorite memories of Livonia. But my favorite interview was with the NICU nurse. I interviewed her at Children's Hospital, and I really wanted to see the struggles of a job for being a caretaker, because she takes care of the young kids that are going through these really hard times, and she even is there for the parents. And I wanted to see the different kinds of frustrating things that were happening there, and I wanted to see kind of the bad side of what was going to go on if I had taken a job with a children's hospital or a NICU. And so I also wanted to see through a Christian perspective, and luckily the NICU nurse that I interviewed, her name was Jennifer, was a Christian, and it was really cool to see that. So she was explaining to me that her spiritual gift was sympathy, and she would really sympathize with the parents there. She would really sit down and like listen to them, and her actions were much louder than like, she couldn't go around saying in a non-Christian environment that she was a Christian, but she did show through her actions of caring and listening to these parents. So I just thought that was really cool. And she also helped those parents decide if they could keep fighting for their child's life or if they had to just let God take over. And I just remember her telling me that it was His will, and that like she was going to do everything to help like save that baby, but like if that need be, that she would have to help them let the baby go peacefully. And so I just thought that her patience with that and her like caring heart showed so much like what I wanted to see, a servant's heart, and she was really a good servant's heart to see. And she also told me about her bonds that she formed with the baby. She would hold them and care for them, and I just think that's really neat. And so she was also talking about the hardest moments for the NICU, and it was not being able to communicate with those kids because they're young. They can't speak. They can't tell her what they need, and so sometimes she would have to step back, breathe, say a prayer, and then just keep going on strong and just keep on going because she knew that they needed her help. And so I thought that was neat. So her heart really just showed me patience and what it was like to serve with a stressful heart, or in a stressful time. And so I don't know, she just really treasured her good times. She really saw all the good times. Even if there were a few bad times, she would pick herself up. She would pick others up. And so I thought that was really cool. And so I started to wonder, how could I be a person who did that? How could I be a person who had patience while serving? And all these women that I was looking at, they really they just showed me how could I be like that? So I think that they just really showed me their hearts. And so I went back to each place, and I wanted to see why they chose that career, because I wanted to choose a career that was like that, taking care of people. And how did they know what their calling was, what their direction was going to be? And the nurses at the nursing home answered that, and they said that they saw a need in their own families for caretakers. They saw a connection with their own grandparents and great grandparents. And the NICU nurse Jennifer was about 7 years old when she saw that her baby sister was born a preemie, and she saw that need, and she wanted to fill that need. So so I wanted to find something to work with, like with something that I would be able to relate to. And I was like, I have no connection like they do. I don't have I mean, I have my great grandma in a nursing home, but like I didn't feel like I had a true connection to where I could go. But then I realized that the more I went to each of these places, the more I had a reason to go into that field. I had a reason to like start to care for people because I had done this really cool experience in senior SEM. And so I learned that perseverance for what I wanted to do through those nurses that I was interviewing. And I started to learn that love for the people that I hadn't felt a connection to until about now. And so I learned so much from them. And I loved that both of them were so, like I loved that both of the NICU and my nursing home, my grandpa's house, all had warmness and love and to give me, and it was crazy. But at first my first vision was to see the different stages of life, and I really wanted to see the different ways that like they could I don't know, I wanted to see the different ways that that the people were working with those stages of life, or that stage of life. And I realized that no matter how many sad moments there were a million more happy moments in each of these places. I found these friends, and I found these great, this great community that I hadn't been able to build until now. And so I go back to my beginning questions. How can I learn patience? How can I build the bridges? And how can I have a servant's heart? And I found that the answer was loving each other. My virtue that I had to choose for this was patience. And I realized that, patience wasn't the only virtue I had to start learning. I had to start learning more virtues, even though I thought I was a pro at other ones. I started to open my heart. I started to love people, and I just really, I thought that I needed patience, but I just realized I needed more. And I looked into so many jobs, and I saw so many different servants' hearts, and with all of that, I saw God's love through that. And even if they weren't Christians, I saw God's love showing to me and to maybe other people. And so I realized that the different small steps can affect everyone in such a small way. And so I'm going to end with this question. How can you affect other people in small steps? How can you make a small step towards maybe asking a kid to eat lunch with you who doesn't have a lot of friends? Or maybe if you see a teacher who's having a rough day, ask them how their day has been. And I just want you guys to try to reach out and make those little steps towards loving others and being able to reach out. So those little things might change someone's world.